The thing I see people getting wrong the most is not understanding that their podcast is a product. It is a product that you are producing for a listener or for a target market. So you have identified a problem, and your podcast is the solution to that problem.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join the conversation with the marketing leaders driving the fastest growing B2B brands. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, you hit the button and the adventure begins. I'm stoked. Why? Because I'm talking to an absolute badass. He is a fellow podcasting expert, tying into the B2B world, tying into marketing, but he's also just a freaking motorcycle riding, absolute badass, sim racing content wizard. And he's a marketing leader, a thought leader, again, podcast host, a storyteller, a coach. You name it, he's done it. Podcast strategy may come out, B2C, B2B, you name it. Host of The Absurdity, founder and podcast producer in intuitive podcasting, Ryan Becker. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And what a great way to tell everyone that I have ADHD. That is perfect. Right on brand for me.
Well, I guess they say if you know, you know, but I guess if you, I should recognize that myself, but I just think it's cool. And I don't even know.
Oh, ADHD is absolutely, for all the weaknesses it offers, there's quite a bit of strengths that it gives me as well.
Do we just pivot this whole show and just talk about ADHD and sim racing for now? Maybe.
We'll see.
We'll see. Well, to ask you the first question, I got to at least do the first question and then to rip up the script. But to ask you this first question, I need to elicit the help of this giant blue foam finger here to ask you, Ryan, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
So the number one thing they need to do is, in my opinion, is realize that their target market is their superiors or their executives or their business leaders, and not actually the target customer that they're selling a product to.
Whoa. Are you saying that the internal stakeholders are the customer and it's not
for
the
the
customer?
marketer? I will say yes. Because they are the audience that all of your toolkits, all of the software, all of the market research, none of that gives you any insight into your internal stakeholders. It only gives you insight into the people you're selling a product to. And the issue is, to do your job effectively, you still need the support of internal stakeholders. And even more so, to do your job in a way that you actually love and enjoy, you need to figure out how to win the stakeholders over to giving you the freedom to do the job the way that you feel it should be done.
Man, that's fair, dude, because I mean, how many times do we see marketers just trying to build on an island? Everyone else is crazy. I'm just going to go over here and start making a fire, and you can't do it. You can't live on your own out there.
No,
you need everybody, right?
Yeah, and I think I think if I had to nail down burnout to one thing, it would be that huge misalignment that happens between what a marketer believes they should be doing or believes would be the most effective, and then what leadership or what executives want. By the way, this applies if you're a contractor. I'm an independent contractor. So for me, I replace that with my clients, because my job is to help my clients reach their target market. But I need my clients to understand the way that I do that. And luckily, landing a client usually involves selling them on my way of doing something. Absolutely. But as an employee, and as a member of a team, that continues over time with bosses, etc. You need to know what they're looking for and what they want, and then being able to translate what you want to do into that language is what frees you up to do it.
Got it. What if they're wrong?
What if the leaders are wrong?
Yeah, your internal target market is wrong.
If your internal target market is wrong, you have two choices. But in both choices, I heavily recommend documentation upon documentation. I think number one, you can, there's a time that you will always run into where someone says, this is just the way you have to do it. Sorry. Or this is the way that we do it. Sorry.
Fair.
Right. Like there's always going to be a line somewhere regarding that. So in my opinion, one is if you really feel like it's wrong, acquiesce, do it their way for a while and document everything. Because I think, well, first of all, if they're wrong, the results will show it. And if you're wrong, the results will show it. And I think there's an amount of humility that comes with being willing to still do something someone else's way and not stick your head in the sand and just say my way is the only way, or dig your heels in and say my way is the only way.
Yeah. I mean, great point, man. I mean, we're marketers. We test things. We do things over and over again. We, test it. I've always liked to say that, it doesn't matter if it's your idea or my idea. Let's test them all, and whoever wins, great. Like the company wins. I don't
Yeah.
need it to be my idea that wins, but also let's test. So yeah, I guess that would be my only pushback. Would be like, oh, what if marketing is like, I'm surrounded by crazy people, but great, test their idea, and especially if they're your boss and your boss's boss, then your survival, their happiness, your survival depends on that. So,
Well, and this is the other thing I will say too. If long term you keep running into walls, then I will remind people as kindly as possible that the value or your income is not the only value you get out of a job. And
sure.
I
Yeah.
remember when I was ready to leave a job, I made sure to stay for as long as I was getting resume experience, right? I stayed until I had results that I could validate, that I could prove on a resume that would help me land the next job. And so within whatever framework I had to work in that I didn't like, I still performed as great as I could so that when I go to other employers and I'm looking to change where I'm at, I can say, this is what I actually accomplished. And I don't have to badmouth anyone. I don't have to burn any bridges. I just make sure that I take whatever value I can from the place that I'm in while I'm there.
Yeah, 100%. It is totally fair, and I think the vast majority of the time, the internal stakeholders may not be wrong. And so, to your point about humility, to say, okay, well, let's, if they've been here longer, especially if you started a new job, then let's keep them happy. Why do you suppose we neglect the internal audience in favor of the external audience so often?
Because we're hired on for a task. And like our eyes, the blinders are on to say we are looking externally at the people that we're selling to. But we're always selling two things. We're selling a product, we're selling whatever our organization is selling, but we're also selling ourselves to the people that we work with to say that, yeah, working with me is still a valuable thing. And so from my perspective, yeah, it's really easy when all of the tools and everything in your daily job is pointing you towards the external customer. Yes, but you've probably already nailed down how to do that if you're hired for a specific role or if you're working in a specific place. Like you're usually know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
And so it's the internal stakeholders. That's the one that none of your toolkits are pointing at. Those are the people that if you can understand what they want and why they want it, the way you can communicate with them can impact a whole lot and give you a lot of trust as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, trust, budget, you name it, right? If you can
Yeah.
speak their language and show some numbers that they want to see, then God, the doors open up.
Yeah.
How
And
do you practically do that?
so this is something I run into on a daily basis, and you will absolutely understand this. Podcast analytics suck. If
Oh yeah.
like to be frank, they suck. They absolutely, because of the way that RSS feeds work, the way that attribution is tied to how do you track someone who listened on Apple Podcasts, but they did it through the Firefox browser on their laptop, right? Like that could be 3 attributable listens on some
Yep.
platforms versus 1. The
Yep.
attribution for listens is just absolutely terrible when it comes to podcasting. And so when I work with clients, what they want is reach. What they want is growth. What they want is a bigger audience over time. And my job is usually tied to reframing their idea of what a successful show is.
Mm.
Because if they're looking for the big audience, then the numbers will lie to them for a while. And quite frankly, unless they're willing to put a ton of ad spend into something, it is incredibly hard organically to grow something to that kind of large scale as a
Yeah.
branded podcast.
Yeah.
Versus saying the highest value audience you have is the right audience, not the large audience. And so my job is basically like, now there is a level where I play that game and I will still send over analytics and show growth over time. The analytics for podcasting are certainly important and do at least give you indicators for growth, right? If
Right.
the number is
Yep.
trending up, whether that number is accurate or not, the number is still trending up or trending down. Those things
Yeah.
still matter, and those are an important part of the report. But my job consistently is widening their scope and their perspective to see that those numbers aren't everything.
And reframing that and giving context to the number. So it's not just floating out there in the ethos by itself.
Yeah. And so, if you're trying to convince internal stakeholders of the way that you want to do something, being able to convince them in a way really, and honestly, if I had to put this in any simple terms, it's understand the business, like the return on business value that you're giving them with whatever you want to do. If you can tie whatever you want to do to a direct business value and result, then you're probably, and that result is something in line with what they want, then you're probably fine. If I,
Right.
like that's in the simplest terms, that's the way to win them over, is speak in terms of business value and revenue, and how whatever initiative you want to do drives that revenue and increases it. And so that is whether indirectly or directly. So as long as you can do that on a practical level, that's going to look different for every person across the industry. And for me in podcasting, are we driving leads through consistent calls to action? Are we able to identify our listeners? Are they downloading lead magnets? Are they clicking follow through links? It can be as simple as, are we getting adequate listener feedback? Or if they're using their podcast for sales, are they actually getting sales calls? Are they selling any of their clients? Are they selling to any of their guests? Like, have they actually converted any guests?
Right.
There are different metrics for what success looks like. And quite frankly, the most successful shows that I've worked with sometimes have less than 500 downloads an episode, but they've generated millions in revenue or millions in opportunity in the form of like waived vendor fees or speaking invites to events in front of their entire target market.
Right.
So the value exists in so many different forms, and for every different client, it's unique, which is what I kind of love as someone with ADHD. If everything was the same all the time, I hate doing it.
Right. And man, podcasts are just so different from each other. And that said, though, do you see some trends? What do you see people getting wrong about podcasting?
What I see people getting wrong about podcasting. So I think the thing that I see the most is, well, actually, let me ask a clarifying question. People or companies?
Companies.
Okay. That matters.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing I see people getting wrong the most is not understanding that their podcast is a product. It is a product that you are producing, where every episode is kind of like a unique version of it, right? But it is a podcast. It is a product that you are producing for a listener or for a target market. So you have identified a problem, and your podcast is the solution to that problem in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, your company wouldn't be creating it. And that's what every product is. A product is a solution to a problem. And so understanding that it is a product means that you also understand that the product is for them. It is not for you. And this is the issue. The issue that I see is that companies and branded podcasts are creating a show and saying, look at us. We made this for us.
Yeah. How do they do that? Like, what are some ways that companies make the pod for themselves instead of their audience?
The number one way that I see this happen is milestone episodes.
Huh.
If I had to be honest, like milestone episodes, no one cares about except you as the podcaster. Like you're excited that you made it to episode 25. You're
Yeah,
excited that
right.
you made it to episode 50. So you're like, we should do a compilation episode of all the
Right.
content that people have already heard. Or milestone episodes feel like they're high effort for the podcaster, but feel low effort to the listener. And my view on it is always give the listener more of why they listen. And they aren't listening to hear you celebrate yourself. Now, granted, it's completely okay to say, hey, we're really proud of getting to this milestone. But as a way of celebrating that, give them more of why they came in the first place. Don't give them less. Give them something new. And that's where, that's probably the number one way I see it. The number two way is usually too heavy on, this is our product. This is who we are. Come buy from us. Or interviewing only customers or their current clientele. It can look like, what are the things that we want to talk about that make us look good. It can also be, let's remove the name of competitors. If a guest mentions a competing product, then we have to remove it. Even though, like, the reality is, if someone mentions a competing podcast agency on my show, if I had a show about podcasting, there are people that agency is better for than for me. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging and celebrating. And I think sometimes we Streisand affect ourselves by trying to remove those things.
What is the Streisand effect?
The Streisand effect, it goes back to, I am trying to remember the exact story, but basically there was an unflattering, I believe it was photo of Barbra Streisand years and years ago. And she demanded it to be taken down. And in doing so, it actually drew attention to the unflattering photo and went everywhere. And so the Streisand effect is literally that. It's you by acknowledging something and drawing negative attention to it, you're actually giving a giant spotlight to it and making it way worse.
Oh, geez. I just Googled the Streisand effect, but yeah, now I want to find that photo. What was the photo? I see. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have a quest after this episode to find the ill-fated. So yeah. Okay. The effect is now captured me. I need to find the photo that she didn't want to be up now.
I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. Reddit probably has it somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. So yeah. I'm taking down competitor mentions and things like that. Now that's not good.
Yeah. So I am of the opinion that if I'm creating a show, if I'm creating a product, I'm creating it for someone else. And I want those people to say, wow, it's like this was made just for me. How did they know that this is what I needed? And that's where I feel like the edge case scenarios that are relevant to your customers, like those are what win your biggest fans, because those are the people that never feel seen. And now you've made them feel seen. They become the champions after that, right? And so when a company or brand approaches a podcast as, look at us and celebrate us and buy from us, that is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to be said of getting the balancing act right, of like, here is value to you. And if you want more value from us, give us a call or schedule or, work with us. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with plugging yourself and plugging your company, but you don't want a podcast to feel like it's nothing more than a 30 or 45-minute commercial for yourself. That doesn't attract anyone.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So avoid those things and away you go. Cool. Have you seen many pods tie into communities?
Like a Slack community or like...
Yeah. Or just like kind of like rallying all the listeners together to be able to interact?
I have not seen it done very well, usually because the focus for most is like just creating the show, and usually teams internally are very low staffed, meaning that they're not honestly prepared for the amount of work that it takes to manage and participate in a community.
Mm,
That's just the reality is I don't think most brands are actually prepared for that step of it. Um, I think there's a lot of value in creating a community around the show that you're making and the content you're producing, or even the product you make. Absolutely. But there needs to be someone who actually is able to engage in the community. And it most likely cannot be your internal producers, because they're still trying to schedule guests, make all the calendars meet, write interview questions, take care of editing, or coordinate with an outside, an external editor and reviewing content. And, there's just too
right.
much on that person. And the skill sets are vastly different to producing a show versus community management and participation.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a tall order to do that. Have you seen much success with like internal podcasts? Kind of circling back around to your initial point of thinking about your internal stakeholders.
I am iffy on internal podcasts.
Yeah. What's your take on it?
I'm iffy because there are a lot of like I'm iffy actually mainly because of ADA. If I had to be like 100% frank, if you're an American company, then and you have people who are deaf, then you need to make sure that you're providing, if it's an internal podcast and there are any benefits to people inside your company that are listening, you need to make sure that everyone in your company can access it. And I think a lot gets lost in transcripts, but also if it is purely internal, I think depending on what kind of industry you're in, there is potential for leaks, or there's potential for damaging information to go out, or security breaches. But I think the other side of it too, if I'm being honest, is like I feel like an internal podcast usually screams we are a family, and most people see their job as this is a paycheck.
Sure.
And so it is hard to like get people to really want to listen and want to engage with a company podcast outside of when it's basically mandatory to do so, or when they fear that there will be consequences for not engaging with it. It is a higher bar to get employee interest.
Well said, right? Because it's classic. You could very easily slip into like the forced fun category with
Yeah,
that pot. Yeah.
exactly. It 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 absolutely makes a lot of red flags go up for a lot of team members.
Yeah.
So I tend to recommend leaning away from them. I think internally, the feeling usually ends up being that this could have been an email.
Huh.
So
Right.
I am,
Wow.
yeah, I'm heavily in favor of other ways to connect with people. Unless there is some value that really can, maybe you're spotlighting certain things, or maybe you do have an active internal employee community, or different internal employee communities, subgroups where people have, maybe there's a whole group that plays Magic the Gathering. Maybe there's a whole group of people
Fair.
that sim race. Maybe there's a whole group of people that are in a bowling league or something, and you want to highlight like the different things that team members are doing. Great. Um, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I just would question if that's the most effective way to really team build within the organization. That's all. So like I sound really negative on them. I'm iffy. I have a hard time picturing the kind of internal podcast that would be very, very effective.
I think you're keeping it real, right? I mean, it has a higher bar. It doesn't mean it can't work. We like it, Ringmaster. We've done one here, and people just genuinely wanted to know more about the coworkers. Cool, culture, cool environment. Wasn't it, so the business purpose? It wasn't like let's artificially raise more. Like you're not going to solve issues with it. Maybe it's just more of like icing on the cake.
Yeah. like if you're making something that people are enjoying, then more power to you, honestly. That's how I view it. I
Yeah.
just think, yeah, and it helps that you're in a like content production and marketing background and environment versus like making a podcast that's actually completely disconnected from the core functions of the business.
Yeah. 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 100%, man. What, where does this go? Where does this go? Like if we fast forward, I remember making fun of AI just like a year ago because it was hallucinating left and right. And now this thing is just getting locked in. So with all these changes going on, if you fast forward a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, where does all this head? Where all the different things you're seeing? What are you excited about the future?
I am excited about the things I'm excited about in the future
Yeah.
are the methods that we will create that allow for genuine and authentic human connection.
Wow.
And that's why I love podcasting. I used to be very concerned that AI would replace me as a podcast strategist, as a producer, and I've become less and less afraid of that over time. It has enabled me, and there are people that, yeah, don't ever need to hire me because great, they have the tools to produce their own show and they'll fumble their way through it the same way that I did on my own when I started teaching myself this stuff a decade ago. And more power to them. I don't ever have an issue with that. I think it's Tim Ferriss who recently came out with a stat that said, or an announcement at least, that said that his book sales were down. And he's someone that writes a lot of self-help and tutorial how-to kind of books. And he mentions that he feels the decline in the how-to genre, the tutorial genre, the self-help genre is actually due to the rise of AI because people can just type into ChatGPT or Claude or you name it and get a framework listed that's personalized to them. They can get, I have friends that have done travel to different countries where ChatGPT even 2 years ago was already planning out their entire trip and they only had to change one or two things traveling
Yeah.
internationally to a country for the first time. Right? I mean,
Or
they're the ways that people have now to get the specific information they need means that your value now needs to come from the authenticity and the genuine connection that you can create via a podcast or any other route. But like that's why I think podcasting is uniquely positioned to do well here.
yeah.
I absolutely feel a lot of hope for it as a medium when people use it this way. By the way, the other side of that coin is you could double down on the how-tos and try to be the source and try to win as the source for those AI searches. Totally fine. You can absolutely double down on that. That's no different than writing SEO optimized blog articles. So yeah, you can absolutely still do that. I tend to be on the other side where I want to offer something that can't be found with a 5-minute Google search or a prompt. I want to offer you something. The thing that I always tell clients is the best question that you can ask is the question that only you could ask. And the best answer you can get is the answer that only they can give. That's what I always aim for.
Wow. Can you say that again? The best
Sure.
question?
The best question that you can ask is the question that only you could ask. And the best answer you could get is the answer that only they can give. And I think of, I'm a huge soccer fan and I follow Chelsea. And I think of back in when they were in the Champions League and they beat Bayern Munich in, I want to say it was 2013.
Okay.
And there was a penalty kick at 90 minutes. And there's a podcast interview recently where Peter Cech, who was the keeper for Chelsea, he actually describes what it was like in I believe it was a 1-1 game, what it was like at 90 minutes to step up to block and save this goal. Who else in the world can tell you that story?
Oh my gosh.
He talks about how he thought about it, how he guessed where Robin, the player on Bayern Munich, where he was going to kick. He went through his whole logic. He went through how it felt, all the prep that went into that moment. I mean, there's no one else in the world that can answer that question because only he was the keeper for Chelsea on that day.
And only he knows what he was thinking.
Exactly.
You know? Somebody watching there that day can have a different story and approach, but he's the only one that knows what was going on in their
Yes.
time.
And
Yeah.
that really, when I watched that, it really sunk this idea into me. So the way that I phrase that is something relatively new even for me, because it really, that story and that clip, it was literally a clip I saw on Instagram. I haven't even seen the full interview, but that was it. I was like, that is an answer only Peter Check could give.
Hey, marketing leaders, it's Amanda here from Ringmaster B2B Podcasting. In today's market, B2B buying is built on one thing: trust. And there's no better way to build that trust than through a podcast that builds connection. At Ringmaster, we help you launch and grow shows that will amplify your brand and can help drive real demand. The best part? We handle all the heavy lifting so you can focus on the big picture. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast for your brand or taking your existing one to the next level, visit ringmaster.com to chat and book a call.
So then my follow-up to that is, then how do you create the question, the best question that only you could ask?
I think it needs to be, I would say this is true for both ends, for both the answer and the guest. I think you need to deeply root yourself in lived experience, because someone's lived experience is the most unique thing that they can offer. And simultaneously, it's also the most connecting thing that they can offer. If I tell someone I have ADHD, yes, that's my unique lived experience. And the way that I engage with my ADHD is unique to me. But someone else, it will listen and say, I also have that. And I also have a lived experience with it. And so there's this shared bond. There's a shared experience that exists, but each of us still have our own unique ways of living that out. And so it's one of the most powerful connectors, while at the same time being one of the most unique things that you can share about yourself.
So would you then phrase your questions primarily to elicit lived experience answers?
Yeah, absolutely. Both from a growth perspective, because stories play way better in short form and in clips than just straight like how-to advice.
Yeah.
But also because that's what makes things interesting, especially if you're in a topic or genre that tends to be more black and white. It just turns into two people yes-anding each other for 30 minutes instead of genuine conversation being able to take place. And so when you get into lived experience, you get into perspectives, you get into opinions, you get into the gray, and the gray is where most people live. And so I think that's where podcasters get the most value as well, is by entering that space and basing their questions from their lived experience. And in many cases, that is the value that you offer, because no one else can ask the questions that you're asking.
Right.
If I can replace any host with anyone else and the questions would not change, then my show has a fundamental problem.
Well, question for you on that, because oftentimes I've found that if you're prepping for a TED Talk, you get really good at telling that story. But without the prep, sometimes humans, we can tell these rambly stories that go for 10 minutes and not really prepared to tell them. And then the magic of the lived experience feels like it gets diluted in detail.
Yeah, that's when I tell them, "Oh, hey, something was wrong on my side, or there was some weird noise happening. Can you share that again?" Or
Wow.
this is the other half of it. If the story is heavy with like heavier on the emotional side, then let it be what it is. I think I will allow a lot more filler words through an edit when someone is telling an emotional story. Because if I take away the pauses and I take away the filler, then I actually lessen the person's emotional connection to their own story. I'm taking away them wrestling with what words to find, with wrestling with their own emotions or choking back tears because they need to get through this next part. Like, be in the moment with people. And so we can clean up all of the other dialogue all day long. I have no problem with it. But when it comes to someone telling, especially a heavier story, I will let it be whatever it needs to be. And sure, if there's irrelevant stuff that I can cut out that actually takes away from the story they're trying to tell, sure, I will help them out. I want everyone to sound as great as they possibly can. but I'm also a fan of the more of that natural communication that we let through, the more authentic, the more and the stronger of a genuine connection that you can build with a guest.
Yeah, man, I'm a fan of that. Just, leave the ums and the ors and the imperfection. I think we're used to hearing that as humans. And when you cut that out, it just sounds like robot speak,
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Well, my next question, I feel like I could talk with you about podcasting for the whole day, but I would say I had this question I've been dying to ask you, and that is, who are you? Who are you? How do you know all these things? Can you take me back in time, little you days? Did you know you're going to be on a marketing podcast, marketing thought leader, teaching people marketing thought leadership and going deep on podcasting and human connection, all this stuff? What was it like? Take me back there.
Sure. So as a kid, it's actually hard. I don't have a ton of memories of like my own childhood, and not for any like particularly bad reason.
Sure.
I just don't. There are,
Well, you're like super old, so I understand that.
it's
right?
true. At 33, it's really, I was just an embarrassing child, so I think I've just repressed all of the shameful moments. That's what it is. No, so I grew up in a very religious household.
Where at? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, Orlando, Florida. So,
Oh, okay.
which is
Yeah,
where
yeah.
I'm based now, and
Nice.
I live like 3 minutes from the house I grew up in.
No way.
Yeah, it is pretty cool because like I really like this area. I don't necessarily think I have to live here the rest of my life, but I do have a really special place in my heart for this area, and it is home for me. I am so yeah, I grew up. I have 2 older siblings, so I'm the youngest of 3. The way that I phrase that is practice makes perfect. So my parents stopped when they got it right, and it just took them a while to get there. And
Of course.
once I got into high school, I decided that I really wanted to be a pastor, and
Wow.
that is what I studied in college to become. And I pastored for 2 years.
Wait, you
Once I
actually
got
did.
out.
So you like
Yep,
graduated, got a
full
divinity
on.
degree, and
Yeah, so I studied to become a pastor, and I did pastor
actually
for
did it.
actually did it. In my
Dang.
denomination, which is Seventh Day Adventism, uh, the the pastoral assignments are not actually like I don't get hired by a local church. Uh, the simplest way of putting it is every state has a higher body that hires pastors
Gotcha,
and
gotcha.
then assigns them out. And so I had a small 2 church district is what it's called, but I had 2 very very small churches that I pastored. They were mostly retirees, and because of the age group I was pastoring, I didn't have a lot of I didn't have any friends that were my age.
Sure.
So podcasting actually became a way for me to connect with people about issues that were important to me. And like it gave me space for genuine conversation in my life. That's what it gave me. And I specifically started after the Pulse nightclub shooting here in Orlando. And I wanted to do something to give voice to that conversation within my own faith community of the Seventh Day Adventist Church. And so that's where that started. And from there, it grew into, while I'm pastoring, eventually I decided to leave pastoring. I took a job at my alma mater doing recruiting and leading a traveling praise and worship team of students that we gave scholarship for. And that's how they would recruit to some of our feeder schools.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. That gave me a lot of production background as well. In addition to and I was doing podcasting the whole way through. And what ended up as me trying to platform and give voice to some of these issues actually turned into now me helping others use their voice to do the same. And so it was a lot of, can you help me start my own? And started doing a lot of seminars and workshops for people. And when I finally decided it was time to step out of my role at the college, I decided to say, hey, well, I've been doing podcasting for 8 years. I don't know what else I want to do. So let me just see if an agency will take me. And I made my resume as specific as I could to all the different things I had done and knew, got an agency to take me on in 2021. And I stayed with him for about a year, realized that I had the tools and knowledge to do this myself and wanted the freedom to do it myself. And so literally my last day of work at that agency was was my 1 year anniversary. And
Wow.
then I went off and started my own. And so that's where I've been since, is doing this on my own for about now 5 years professionally and full time, and just very grateful for it. Very grateful for the kind of content I get to work on. And yeah, that is, so that's how I transitioned into podcasting. And I will tell you this, my pastoral background is actually what makes me a great podcast coach and like content strategist, because
Interesting.
I spent week after week after week creating a message that was tailored to a very specific audience. And not only that, an audience that was ideologically opposed to a lot of the things that I felt. And the question was, how do I communicate authentically with this audience without betraying my own values and without asking necessarily them to betray some of theirs that aren't objectively bad? And where can I find common ground with them? Where can I meet in the middle with them? And what are the things that are the most important that I can focus on for them? And that's what I did.
More.
And that idea is what has translated into me being able to be effective in this space. It's a rather unique thing, but yeah, when the majority of my job is, I say the majority, when a major function of my job is communicating a message tailored to a group of people, well, that's marketing. So as well. And that is what I'm really proud of, is that translating over so smoothly. It actually surprised me.
But I see it, man. I see that translating really well. And the prep that goes into it, the research that goes into it to be able to present a message. And did you script it out? Did you write notes to yourself? Did you do the bullet thing? How do you
Yeah.
remember those whole?
There are some sermons that I could give easily right now off the cuff
Oh, no kidding.
that I could talk about. And the one thing I'm terrible at is like scripture memorization. I'm really good at remembering like a general area that a Bible verse is in, but I'll be terrible at like remembering the specifics. But yeah, I have an iPad mini 2, like it still has a home button on it.
Back in the day when they were good.
Firmware is stuck at like 12.1 or something when we're at like 26 now. But I would use Google Docs as my notes, because on my iPad and on the mini, it was perfect for like a podium, but I could scroll freely and there weren't any page breaks. It would just treat my thing as like just one long scroll essentially.
I like that.
So that's what I would use for notes, though. Some days when I would procrastinate or I wasn't feeling great, like sometimes I would still go up with the iPad, but the only thing would be my heading at the top and then the rest of the page was blank. And I would preach off the cuff. So that did happen. And it's always those that do the best, of course. It's always those that someone comes, Pastor, that was incredible. That was my favorite message you've ever preached. And I'm like, cool, I did no prep for that. But the reality of that was I got very, very good at looking at an outline and then being able to fill in the gaps after. I never really liked using PowerPoint slides or slide decks because I don't like feeling locked in to a specific order of presentation. So yeah, that's how I did it.
Yeah, man. Powerful. And maybe a little bit of grace alongside, just boosting the rest of it too, filling in the gaps.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully.
Oh man. Well, I've got a hypothetical question for you if you're ready for this.
Sure.
For a podcaster, you should be able to dodge and dive with this one. All right. You see, I may or may not have a time machine up here in New Hampshire. So you come visit and it's out and back covered in a tarp. So we go use this time machine, and it's a particular kind of time machine. You get a chance to go meet yourself 4 days after getting that divinity degree, where you're on your way to pastoring 2 churches. What do you say to that guy? What do you tell that Ryan?
I'm torn between probably 2 things. The first is own what's yours to own. In other words, be accountable for what's yours to be accountable for. There's a noticeable trend in my life, especially in my adulthood, where I have I've let others off the hook too much, or taken the blame for things that I didn't need to take the blame for, and tried to carry too much on my own. And while there's a little bit of like, there's something good there, There's something altruistic about that. At the same time, I'm also preventing others from growing into the people they need to be by taking accountability for things that are theirs to own. I'm
Fair.
taking opportunities to grow. And so that would be number one. I think number two would be live below your means and make sure that you leave plenty of bandwidth. One of the first mistakes I made was kind of when I first started getting my paycheck. I figured out all of my bills and stuff. And, you know, I made commitments on like a car payment and on an apartment. And then when my mom at this stage of my life decided to, or like when we agreed that I would now take over my own car insurance, I did not know how high my car insurance was. And at the time it was very high. It was over $300 a month for just me. And I was unaware of that. And I had already locked in all my other bills. And so from that day, I was on the back foot financially. And I honestly, to this day, I'm still getting out of that chain. And that was, 10 years ago. So 10, 12 years ago. So that would be the other thing probably that I would say. But the first one, yeah, own what's mine to own.
Powerful. Do you think that Ryan is going to listen to you?
I think at first he won't. But I think eventually he will. And now I wonder if that's actually a good thing. Like, I think he will, and I think he would avoid some of the decisions that I made. But then I look back on it, and there are certain things that I feel if I hadn't gone through them, I wouldn't feel as strongly about them the way that I do. I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I did. There are other benefits to the things that I experienced.
Fair.
But I am torn on whether or not I would really want myself to listen to me or not.
That's tough, man. Maybe you're just better off just telling yourself to buy some Apple stock and then just
That would be great.
let it
That would
ride.
solve the finance problem for sure.
It would.
Absolutely.
Or buy Tesla when it's at $4.
Yeah, literally buy anything when it was super cheap. Even buy Doge when it was still under.
Bitcoin.
That eventually did skyrocket.
Holy moly. Well, dude, hey, where can people go if they want to connect with you? Chat more podcasting, talk about whatever.
The two best places are going to be LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll give you those links if you want for show notes, but just look for Real Ryan Becker is the URL. It's not because all the other ones are fake. It's just because Ryan Becker is apparently a common name. So, but the Real Ryan Becker is going to be my name on both platforms. You can message me, send me a connection request, whatever. Always happy to chat. Always happy to offer whatever support I can to people. That's literally, you just sent me a connection and now we're here. So, I'm just always happy to talk with people when I have the opportunity to. And quite frankly, that's a goal of mine this year, is to network more and be more visible to others. So yeah, I very much welcome and encourage it.
Man, so good. Be more visible. Dude, thank you so much for coming on here. I've had a blast. I feel like we had our own time warp where like the time is just zapped by. That's how you know it's a good convo, right? When you're doing a pod and you like run out of time, as opposed to you're halfway through and you're like, oh no. What am I gonna do?
How do I stretch this out for the rest? Yeah,
no, you just cut it off. But dude, thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it. Anytime you want to do it again, just let me know. I've got plenty more stories to tell.
Hell yeah. You know what? Story hour. We need that next. Episode 2. We'll get you back on here. Dude, so good. And for everyone listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, then share this with one person, 2 people, 9,000 people's cool. But either way, just good information in other people's hands. Definitely, if you've got a friend who's not minding their internal stakeholders, let's get this in front of them so we can kind of zap them a little bit and protect them a little bit, because those stakeholders will get you if you don't take good care of them. So with that, Ryan, thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connect2market.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.